Hi and welcome to Car Mechanical, and today I'm going to take you through how to replace an alternator on your Audi A3 8L model. First thing I'm going to show you here is my windscreen wipers working extremely slowly. I knew my alternator was on the way out, or the battery was, and you can see here that the car just won't start. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put a multimeter onto the battery, and we can see when we start it that the voltage really does drop down quite low. So it drops all the way down to sort of about 1 volt when it does get cranked. So that's no good. So we're going to take the negative terminal of the battery off. Once we've taken the negative terminal off, we're going to place that to one side. Just pay some note to how much that terminal is turning. My negative terminal is very loose, and I'm going to cover that in a new video and put some new terminals on. But we're going to tuck that off to one side. The next thing we're going to deal with is we're going to take these spring clips off, and then we're going to take off the intercooler piping so we can get access to the alternator. Now, spring clips can be a right pain to use, and you'll see in the second half of the video that I'm going to swap the spring clips for Jubilee clips. Spring clips are also known as constant tension clips or clamps. They do their job really, really well, but they can be an absolute pain to undo, as you can see here. So we're also going to take the headlight cover off, and you might want to take out the bulb that's behind there as well so you can get access to the spring clip below. If you can get in there to get the spring clips though, undo them. Once you've undone that spring clip, pull off the intercooler pipe and also remove the map sensor like you can see me doing on screen. So we're going to take the intercooler pipe and put that to one side, and then most of the bolts we're going to undo here are 13mm bolts for the tensioner and for the alternator. So we're going to undo the top part of the tension first. It's like a piston that helps to hold it in place. I loosen it off first and then I undo it by hand. That's going to come off, and that helps hold everything in place, but the main tension is placed by one of the other bolts. So we're going to get back in with a 13mm ratchet, or use a 13mm spanner or a ratcheting spanner. I'm going to switch between all of those. And just start undoing all of your bolts, and at some point when you undo this, you're going to see the alternator shift, or the tensioner shift, which is going to slacken off the belt. So it can take a little bit of time to undo all of these. Just take your time and use the best tools that you have for everything. I switch over to a ratcheting spanner, as when the socket comes too far out, it starts to get in its own way a little bit. So when you switch to the ratcheting spanner, which is a bit thinner, we can get in there a bit more. And some of them are nice and loose enough, or the threads have been put on with anti-seize or something, so they're not super tight when you're undoing them. Okay, so on this tensioner that I am undoing on screen at the moment, there's actually 4 bolts in it. They're all 13mm, and as I mentioned, use the best tool you can to undo them with. Now, what will happen is, as the tension comes off, the belt will become slacked at some point as the tensioner moves, and you can then take the belt off the alternator, which gives you access to the lower bolt on the alternator after you've taken the tensioner off. So we're going to keep working these bolts off here. I think I've got to the point here where the socket's no longer going to fit, so I'm going to move over to a ratcheting spanner. And unfortunately, coming up in the video, I lost about 10 to 15 minutes worth of footage, and this was after I came back to start editing. And this is actually taking the alternator off and putting it back on. So I'm going to talk through some of this, but it's really easy to take all of this off. So you've got the 4 bolts for the tensioner that I'm showing you here being taken off. The tensioner will then simply lift out, and that's going to give you access to the alternator, and the alternator is then held in with 2 more bolts. Now, when you take your tensioner off, put it somewhere safe, and then those bolts that you've been taken out, 2 are longer and 1 is shorter, or I think 2 are shorter and 1 is longer. Put them in the corresponding hole that they came out of, so when you put it back in, you make your job a lot easier and don't end up threading a short bolt into the long bolt hole and finding out when one of the long bolts won't go all the way through. Okay, so we're coming up to the section that I lost the footage of, but all you need to know here is that the alternator is held on with 2 13mm bolts. After they're taken out, the alternator might need to be worked out a bit, but it will come off. You also need to remove the 10mm nut on the back of the alternator for the power, and the 8mm for the ground, and then the little clip that will unclip. Now we're going to cover that in a second, because I'm going to show you where they go back into place, so it's quite easy to get them off. And I'm just showing you here the new alternator already in place. Luckily, the new alternator, once you put it on, it's going to be nice and easy to go on, because it's got these little bushes that will get pulled into place by the new bolts. And I'm just showing you the 2 alternators side by side there. So you're going to put the alternator back in with its 2 13mm bolts, and then you're going to put the tensioner back in place with its 4 bolts that are going to go back on. Now there is a trick to this as well. You need to pre-tension the tensioner before you put it on, and you're going to see in a second I'm going to show you a clip with a little nail that's going through it a little bit. This is to keep the tensioner tensioned. Now you could do this with some wire hanger or some strong wire or something, but essentially what you want to do is put the tensioner belt back on the car in such a way that it will keep the belt untensioned. So you tension the tensioner as such to keep the belt untensioned, so that when you take off whatever you've put in place, like here you can see this nail or screw that's been put in place, and when we pull it off, the tensioner will then snap into place and it will tension up the belt. Now unfortunately that was in the footage I lost, but you can see here after we've taken it off that the alternator belt is tensioned. Now I'm going to show you where all the fixings are on the back of the alternator. So where I'm pointing to on screen here, that is a 10mm, that is your positive power cable, and under where my finger is there under that cable, that's an 8mm, that's for your ground. And this is your signal cable, this is just to tell the car it's connected and how much voltage it's creating, and that just clips back on. So we're going to put the intercooler piping back on, and I mentioned earlier that I was going to switch over to Jubilee clips. I've just got fed up of spring clips flying all over the place and being incredibly difficult to position in very, very small areas to work in. So you can see here I've been able to place the Jubilee clip. I can put the hose in. So with a little bit of work in, the intercooler piping stroke hose in will go straight into place. And then I can get a socket with an extension. I think these use an 8mm. And the nice thing with Jubilee clips is that you can position them and you can move them, and then you can slacken them a tiny bit if you need to remove things about. Where with spring clips it's almost an all or nothing movement in my experience. So we've got the lower part of the intercooler hose on, and that's actually where the front mounted intercooler on my TDI is down there. And I'm going to put the bulb back into place here. So I didn't show taking that off earlier, unfortunately that part got lost as well. But these will just clip back into place, and there's a little spring clip on that as such. A different type of spring clip, but a spring clip nevertheless. Okay, and we're going to put the headlight cover back on as well. So we're nearly all done in this section. And we're going to move on to the rear intercooler piping. So the Jubilee clips here are loose, and it's going to allow us to position the pipes and put them into place. Again, with Jubilee, with constant tension spring clips, that can be a pain. But with the Jubilee clips, we're able to line everything up, get the pipes where we want them, without having to hold on to the constant tension clamps and hope that everything lines up and then let go of it. We can slowly do everything up. Any disadvantage here might be that it can take a bit longer to do everything up. I'd rather that because I can get the accuracy of doing everything how I want it. And also, these Jubilee clips were really cheap. I got them from a company called Toolstation. They're 50 to 70mm clips, and I got 10 for about £2.50 or something like that. And now we can see we're putting the map sensor back into place. If you've got any questions about the wire coming off of that, that's a slight mod, and I'll be covering that in a future video. And the map sensor itself has seen better days. So now everything's done up, we're going to clamp up the battery. We've got that awful negative terminal, so although this is sped up, I can tell you it's moving about quite a bit. But if we get the voltage, we can see it's only holding at 11.3. I'm going to try and start it, but nothing's going to happen, it's just going to drop the voltage. So we're going to use a spare jumper battery. I'm going to test the voltage on that in a second as well. I think that's about 12.8. So yep, we'll show you that once we get over these slightly dirty terminals. About 12.7, there we go. That's actually enough to jump start the car. So once we do jump the car, you can see it pops into life. We take the booster cable straight off. We can see we're getting near enough 14 volts. More than happy with that. That's good to go. Now I'm just going to quickly show you as well how you can test the alternator. So if you put your negative alternator lead and put that on the case of the alternator, and if you put your positive lead onto that 10mm positive bolt I showed you earlier, or the positive connector where the 10mm goes onto, we can test and see that the voltage coming from the alternator is the same that is going to the battery, and they're pretty much spot on, and anything between them is probably to do with the connections. So I hope this video has been helpful. All I can do is apologise that I lost a lot of the footage, which were key parts. I'm really upset and annoyed that I lost the part of taking the alternator off. and putting it on, which involved taking off some of the connections and dealing with the tensioner belt, which are big parts of this. But hopefully with the overview, I've given you enough detail, and then in the parts that are missing, an outline to be able to have the confidence to be able to attempt to do this yourself. It's going to be pretty much the same for Audi A3s with the 1.8 turbo engine, so mine's a TDI. And for the normally aspirated engines, you're not going to have the intercooler piping in the way, which is great. Now I'm going to wrap this video up here. I mentioned on this video there's a couple of videos that I'm going to do that are coming up. There's some very big videos coming up which include painting the entire car, which you may have noticed in this video. But I'm going to show you how to replace battery terminals. I'm going to show you how to replace all of your spring clips with Jubilee connectors. And there's also some other tuning videos coming up as well. Now, if you have liked this video, please hit the like button. Please leave any feedback below. Please share out videos from the channel, and please subscribe if you'd like to see more like these in the future. Thank you for watching.